What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on these analysis. We're going to be looking at MSTR, Microstrategy, and Bitcoin, along with other indicators and different charts. So when you take a look here on the monthly, you can see we just closed the monthly today, and we closed within the golden zone, which is that key level that we've been speaking of for a very long time at this point now. That it's a continuation to the downside from this pool here. We were saying all the way down here that when we get to this point, we should find some rejection, which we have been finding. And right now, we just closed inside of it on the monthly, which is extremely bullish. And we closed outside of this downward sloping trend line. I will show that on another chart so you can see it a little bit better. But we're looking pretty good. So we got to close inside of this bearish golden zone and outside of the downward sloping trend line. This was probably one of the best days that we've seen in a while. So let's see if we can keep the momentum going. When you take a look here on the weekly, we still have 2 days and 20 hours, but you can see that that close is outside of this downward sloping trend line. So that's a very, very good sign. And pretty much it looks like we might have found our bottom. We'll see, of course. But we do have this upward sloping trend line that was supporting price. And I was saying, if we don't make a move now, we could chop sideways and then touch this gray trend line and then start our move upward. But it looks like we're starting to move now, which is nice to see. And when you take a look on the daily, you can see that this is actually one of the better days that we've had percentage-wise. When you go from the actual close of the last day on Friday to the top, it was a 6.16% move, which is pretty large. I think it's even larger than this one. Even if you take it from this bottom there, it's 5.9, and of course, if you take it from the actual open or from the prior day, it wasn't as big. So it's been a while, maybe from this one. Yeah, it's probably the best day that we've seen since one of these candles in the middle of this large move here that we've had, which was around like an 88% move or something around there, 82% from the bottom. So this is a good start. We'll see where it takes us, of course, but it's a nice thing to see outside of the downward sloping trend line and in the middle of this golden zone, which we were consistently getting rejection at. So the fact that we were able to close with this on top of us with the golden zone, it's a good sign, because the last time we touched the trend line, we got bounced off about 4 times, if you can see that here, roughly 3 or 4 times. So it looks like we were actually building up a little bit of momentum as we were pushing through. So it's a good day. It kind of validates the idea that we were speaking of, which was that double bottom that we kept talking about. And it looks like it's starting to play out. So let's see what happens. I do think once we break this golden zone, it's going to relieve some pressure. And then we have to break 450, and then that's going to relieve some more pressure. And then we can probably get a nice move up. MSTR is pretty resilient today. Even as Bitcoin dropped in the morning, it was still holding up very well. On the daily SMAs, you can see that the 20 fell underneath the 50, but the 20 looks like it could potentially end up curling back up and then overtaking the 50, which would be a very bullish sign, because the last time we saw that happen was at this point over here. And if you measure just from the point that it crossed over, you can see it was 45%. So if we were to just take it from that point here, 45% takes us to much higher targets. Not saying that's going to happen again, but just my observation, around 550. So that's a good sign to see. Like I said, the yellow is the 50 and the blue and white is the 20. On the 4 hour, we kind of have the same concept, but the 20 actually just surpassed the 50. And the last time we saw that was back over here, and we had a nice move as well. When you look at the daily Bollinger Bands, you can see we broke through the blue band, got a retest, and we kind of pushed back up. Now we're just hugging the red. So let's see if we can continue hugging that as we make our way up, or if we find a rejection like we've seen over here a couple times. On the 4 hour, we're in the same position. So we closed outside of it back-to-back days. So that's very bullish. So normally we don't spend too many days outside of it. So seeing back-to-back candles on the 4 hour is extremely bullish to see. And when we take a look at global liquidity, you can see that it's still creating higher highs and higher lows, and it just broke these recent highs and catapulted up higher. That's because the dollar is dropping, which we'll go over later in this video. So stick around. Make sure you guys like and subscribe if you guys enjoy content like this. But you can see that we created a fresh high. We're pushing up higher. And I think the 12-week kind of lines up for the most part with MSTR directly. And when we look at the EMA, the 8-week EMA, you can see we closed back above it, retested, and now we're pushing off of it, which is a nice sign. And on the daily, kind of have the same concept where we broke above, we had a couple touches, and now we're pushing off of it. But this close outside of here is so bullish. And you can see all those wicks, and now we're finally outside of it. So doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet, because we still have this golden zone that can act as rejection just as it did here. As long as we're playing outside of this downward sloping trend line, that's one less thing that's going to be acting as resistance. On the weekly RSI, still looking good. Higher highs and higher lows. Created like a double bottom, pushing up higher. Let's see if this thing can break through this 67 region and eventually make it up to the 70 area, which is the overbought territory, for a nice extended move. Here, we spoke about a double bottom, which is playing out. And within that double bottom, we also have an inverse head and shoulders, something similar like that. And it looks like that's starting to play out. So let's see. They're two bullish reversals. So I would imagine that this thing can continue up higher. Of course, we know that that can change in the blink of an eye. Right now, things are looking extremely bullish for MSTR and Bitcoin overall. On the weekly, we actually got a green flip after the red. It was a little temporary red flip, and now we're back to the green. So that's nice to see. You can see the last two times that we had the green flips, they were pretty large moves. So we had one there, and then of course this one here. So the last two times were pretty large moves, and you can see what happened after the fact. When you got those flips, you can see price moved much higher rapidly. Here on the daily MACD, we also got the green flip and the blues surpassing the orange, and now we're actually starting to see a little bit of momentum to the upside. So this is nice to see. Hopefully we can continue it. We want to see something similar to this move over here, where you see that continuation of momentum being built. We don't want to see a nice green candle being formed and then push back down, then ramp up. We want to see a nice steady climb, just like we saw here and like we saw over here. It looks like the bounce off of this zone could have just been the 382 along with this horizontal level of support. So this could be as deep as we go for this leg here, this bull flag. We will see, of course. Like we said about this one over here, this one pulled back to the 0.5 to the 618. Depends if you want to move it up a little bit. Still kind of the same area. You can see that we made it down to that mid-level and we didn't make it here, which means that this is slightly more bullish than this one over here. So that's a good sign. We just need some momentum kicking up. MSTR ended up having a higher volume day than the average volume. I believe it's 10 million, and we were above that, I don't know, like 14 or 15 million, which is nice to see. So hopefully we can continue the momentum though. And here on Bitcoin, we got a very nice close on the weekly. We closed within these wicks over here. Very nice sign to see there. And here on the daily, you can see that was a very nice close as well, where we closed at 108.3. Super bullish. Close within these wicks, above these wicks actually. I was hoping that we would maybe test this level and then shoot up higher. We'll see what happens. Of course, we still have 2 hours left, but we did get a retest, and it retested a little bit deeper than I was anticipating. And you can actually see that here on the 4 hour. It was actually just, looks like it retested the bull flag that we had drawn out. So we had this bull flag being formed. We broke out, got a real retest here. There was an actual confirmed retest here. And then we shot back up. But now we're waiting to close back above this region so we can have a nice move to the upside. We're also saying once we got a 4 hour close above here, it was going to increase our odds of running into this downward sloping trend line, which we did. And then if we were able to break that, touch 109, which we didn't get to do. I did think it was going to be a more bullish move, especially when you look at the wicks that it had. after seeing this 30-minute candle here, I was saying that was very, very bullish, and then it ended up actually falling off. We closed back within, and then we kind of fell off the table there. So that was interesting to see. I thought this was going to be a very bullish sign here, this wick right there. But doesn't mean that we can't, reclaim that and continue pushing up higher. But overall, the structure still looks the same overall. Nice bull flag being broken, and we're retesting levels before potentially taking off. Maybe it was just a little fake out, and we'll see. But we did break the structure of it. So like I said, this was the retest over here, creating higher moves. Let's see if we can continue holding, and if we break underneath this wick, then we could probably potentially see the bottom of this wick and then this zone down here. Right now, I'm going to keep these lines up here. I think they're pretty important. Getting a 4-hour close above this, I think, opens up the idea of making it back up to the 108.5 level and then to the downward sloping trend line again. And if we were to break that, like I said previously, and this wick right here, then I think we see this level of about 109, roughly speaking. When we look at Tether Dominance, you can see that we had this upward sloping trend line that we broke, we retested, and now we're pushing back down. So I do think after this retest, it's going to increase the likelihood that we do touch this trend line here. Whenever you break the primary trend line, you tend to touch the secondary trend line. So after breaking this one, I am anticipating that we touch this trend line at some point, and hopefully we can fall all the way through this trend line and this level of support. So there's going to more than likely be a bounce at this point, but at some point I would hope that we fall through, retest, and then push down to the next level at that 4.43 level. Right now we do have a lot of support underneath price though. When you take a look at the daily, you have the 200 and the 50 underneath it. So if we can get a daily close underneath there, that's going to increase the likelihood of falling through. But for now, it's going to be acting as a lot of support and more as a trampoline more than anything. And if this goes up, that means Bitcoin goes down. So this is a rotation from risk off to risk on when you take a look here at this. We were speaking of global liquidity earlier, and we were talking about the dollar and the correlation. As this drops, global liquidity goes up. So as you can see, we are getting a steeper fall down, and I would anticipate that Bitcoin will continue to follow as well. But you can see that's a pretty significant drop from this point here. We've been pretty bearish on the dollar. It was a 2.6% drop. So I would imagine that Bitcoin could potentially start to rally. Not guaranteed, of course, but if we continue the trend, then I would imagine that we will see higher prices for Bitcoin. And as global liquidity continues to rise, it's just going to show that Bitcoin's move can be extended, and the move for all risk on assets can be extended for a longer period before we see some kind of drawdown. Right now, this is looking pretty bearish, which is nice to see. It's good for Bitcoin. That's what we want to see. So let's see if we can make it down to that 95 level that we've been speaking of. We did fall underneath this key level of support, and now it's going to be acting as resistance. And when you take a look here on the weekly, you can see that that's pretty much your last line in the sand before you fall down to these levels around 95.9 to about 95.3. So that is a key level that we just fell underneath, and we got the close on the weekly, which is super bearish, which is nice to see. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one.